Hello and welcome. My name's Jordan Dorgran, and this is the Wing Chun Qigong channel. Today, I want to talk about the Yiji Kim Yang Ma in relation to Qigong. One of the things I wanted to call out is the premise of the school is that all Wing Chun is Qigong or contains Qigong. And some may disagree with this, and that's totally fine. That's like their school. But I'm going to give you my reasonings behind why I believe that all Wing Chun contains Qigong. And then I'm going to apply that to the Yiji Kim Yang Ma stance. And I'm going to call out certain things that may have been misinterpreted or just someone else's interpretation. So if that's what they believe to be true, so be it. I'm not claiming that this is the only way or the final way. What I am claiming is um, it's the way I've interpreted the Yiji Kim Yang Ma based on Qigong studies. So firstly, about Qigong itself and why is it in these Chinese martial arts? You could see the Qigong training as the gem. It really is the gem of Chinese martial arts, and it was the thing that was always kept hidden for centuries and centuries. If you went to train with the master, you needed to gain their trust, normally around 10 years before they may even divulge and start talking about these inner workings of Qigong. So you can see a large number of people may have passed through and never made it through those 10 years and never learnt these things, as one. Two, when it was divulged to the student that was trusted most, it generally may have been just one student. It was the selected student who was to carry on that lineage. In, I guess, the Cantonese, it was a Yatoi Jiangxi, and it's the student to carry on the next generation. And they were normally given the inner door teachings. Some of the teachings I'm just going to talk about right now. The next is, well, why does it have Qigong? Well, the reason it does is there's many reasons, but one of the primary ones is Chinese martial arts differentiate from the Western martial arts due to the force generation, the engine it uses to generate force. And this force is called Jin, and it's a special type of force. It can be trained hard, and it's much easier for beginners to learn the hard style of Jin. If you can comprehend and understand, grasp and train and achieve the hard style of Jin, with further practice and greater relaxation and calmness of mind, you will gradually move inwards to the softer style of Jin. To get cracking with the softer style of Jin as a beginner is actually very difficult. And you would see this in the Tai Chi arts, where it's primarily 100% a soft style art. But please don't get me wrong, there is a generation of Jin there that can be done in the hard style as well. Just depends on the lineage. With Wing Chun, which is the primary focus of this channel, we have both. And so if you're going to learn those, it's easy to go, you need to go through the hard to achieve the soft. And in order to achieve this Jin, you need the internal gem of Qigong and the understanding of Qi. This understanding of the alignment of your body, your physical body, as well as the control and coordination of the physical body, and the subtleness of feeling, interoception, as well as exterior proprioception, inner and outer feeling reception that occurs in different parts of the brain, to tap in to the energetic forces is what is required. There is nothing too esoteric about this because we all have these energies within our body. Within traditional Chinese medicine, you will see the 12 major meridians, and they are interlinked with the visceral organs of our body, as well as different aspects like the triple warmer, for example, isn't something that you could point to from a Western medicine perspective. These are not the energetic lines that we talk about when we focus on martial Qigong. We look towards the 8 extraordinary vessels. So there's a quick sort of overview of the energetic component that moves from physical to what is called internal. And when I talk about internal, it means going deeper within the body into that energetic realm. That itself, when it can be tapped into, can then be manipulated, enhanced, and then expressed back out via your physical body. And it can produce hard jin or soft jin. This is the beauty of the Chinese martial arts that they offer the entire world. Unfortunately, during the reign of the Cultural Revolution, the powers that be were so paranoid about an overthrow of the government, they proceeded to remove the martial components or the combative components of many styles across China. When this occurred, we lost this Jin deliverable that it was promised in the Kung Fu. So you might see in many athletic associations that there are very flowery type techniques, but it doesn't have the power behind it, which is the true essence. And this is the Jin. Another thing that makes it quite difficult to come across the true teachings is that the old masters themselves, many of them may have been illiterate. They didn't write these things down. Then when they taught their students, you normally had to be a student for around about a decade before they fully entrusted you. And they would have been assessing things such as your morality, the way that you used your mind internally, and how you expressed that externally in your deeds. And only somebody who could be completely trusted would then the master open up and talk about these Qigong components, because then they knew that this individual, which could be termed a Yat Doi Zhang Si, who would be the lineage holder to pass on to the next generation. So we keep narrowing the gap to identifying or finding the true gem of Chinese martial arts. But I promise you that these things are there, and they have been there in arts such as White Crane. And this art itself is the mother art of Wing Chun. If we look at White Crane, it had aspects of striking with punches, kicking, grappling, and China. All of these are also contained in Wing Chun. They're also contained within the Wing Chun forms. I guess the part that you could say that may be lacking in modern day Wing Chun is the going to ground grappling, which is a predominant focus of, say, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But all those other components are integrated and there. So if we wanted to learn to express this Jin and also train it, we need to be able to train the internals or get to the Qi. One of the first training methods to do that is the Yi Ji Kim Yang Ma. The stance itself is a Qigong stance, but it is a manipulation of Qigong training that is not just health Qigong, because there's different types, um, or scholarly qigong and those sorts of things. It's a manipulation of qigong to make it martial qigong, so you can discover the qi and then use yourself in a mechanism to be combative against your opponent. Or if we take this to stop the fight, so to speak. So it's best if you can stop the fight before it happens, but if it's going to happen, then you're the one who controls it and ends it. So it's very important. And there's also a saying in regards to Jin and Qi that if you practice your martial arts without discovering and training these components, then you get to an old age and you're empty. So you've wasted your life in a sense, training the externals of things. So let's jump into the Yiji Kenya Ma and how does that train Jin development via Qigong? So let's just go through a couple of steps, and I'm not going to go through all of them because the idea is to give you this information so you know that there is a delicate type of training involved and that all the information is disclosed in the training that I offer. When we begin the Yiji Kimyang Ma, we stand naturally, feet together, with our arms by our side. What you want to do is you find your center of balance, and we want to raise up via a point at the top of the head called the Bahoi. Now, if I were to say to you to lift up, for example, and I want you to try this at home, you might push up from within you, like say in your chest, up your neck to the top of your head, you're pushing up. What this does, you'll feel it starts to tense inside of you. It causes a tension. And we don't want to be generating this type of tension when we're doing Qigong. Actually, we want the opposite of that, which is called Sung. And that means to release and to relax, but that is another topic in and of itself. But for now, just know that you want these large muscles in your body to be relaxed. And this type of movement causes more of a contraction than the expansion. So the trick behind it is that if you can feel the cervical spine and your skull, and as if there were a balloon attached, but not just to the top of your head. What if it went straight in and this helium balloon was lifting? When you do this, there's this gentle lifting of the cervical spine and also the occipital at the back and base of the skull. And you'll notice there is no tension in the chest and shoulders. They tend to drop away. If done correctly, you'll also notice there's a natural tucking in of the chin. So if I were to say to you, just tuck the chin in, some people, that could be better a mobility exercise because that too causes tension. It's tucked in too much or too out. So we have the one causal technique, which is that thread within you being lifted up. The next part of this is to do with your perineum. There is in the yogic traditions a set of bandhas that are extremely important. For those who don't know, the there is a crossover between the yogic techniques from India and the yogic techniques from China. In India, this key technique would be called Mula Bandha. Over in China, we can call it Tai Gong. In order to get to the perineum, though, if we were to use the perineum, it can cause it to tense up. So we, in a sense, want the perineum to be open, but also sealed. The way to do this is you lift the anus. Now, there can be multiple videos I've seen of people confused about this and discussing it, but you already know how to do it very naturally. If you picture yourself in an open market and there's all these people around, and all of a sudden you've got a tummy cramp and you need to go to the toilet and do a number two. Well, you need to hold it, don't you? You hold it. And by holding it, you get your anus and squeeze and lift up. By doing this, you wouldn't squeeze and get really tight and do all of these things. It would be something that you just like, oh, I've got to keep that in and get to the toilet. So I'm not talking about something that's like diarrhea and something where you probably would, but it's just a normal, like, oh, I have to hold that so I can get to the toilet and then I release. So that holding is all that's required. So as we stand like this, we will then turn on that Tai Gong, which is a lifting of the anus. You will find with this, there is a natural type of contraction that can go around the pelvic floor. This is like forming like a trampoline in a sense on your pelvic floor. So as they say, the anus lifts, you'll find the pelvic floor being very supportive when you do that. And you might feel like you could just sort of sit into it. So what I do here is people say, tuck the pelvis. Tucking the pelvis can be incorrect, just like if somebody tucks the chin, they go too far. You have too far of a rotation with your pelvis. So we don't want it like a duck's bum where the bum's pointing outwards, and we don't want it all the way tucked under where you have no bum. If you do this Tai Gong technique and you hold and pull, you will feel that your hips will naturally start to rotate. They, as an effect of Tai Gong, rotate forward rather than you trying to rotate forward. With this and the lifting, you should be able to find that within the center of your body is a natural opening alignment, that it's now one piece. There's not a head and the upper torso and the hips. It's simply one unit, and that's how it feels. And all it is using your mind to have the lifting of the Ba Hoi and the lifting of the anus. To pressure test if you've done this correctly, when we go into the Yiji Kem Ma, you bend the knees. Now, the way to do this is actually to lean forward as you bend the knees, then simply trying to drop down. See, these little pieces are the way to get you there correctly. You'll find with your Tai Gong on properly, as you lean forward, bending the knees, there's only so far you can go. And that so farness keeps the knees behind the toes if you check. Now, if you turn off your Tai Gong, you will notice that your hip can rotate back and you can bend your knees more. And the knees would be in front of the toes, a place where you never want them to be in any type of training because it will lead to knee problems. So if we have the Tai Gong on and the Ba Hoi lifted, and we lean forward and the knees themselves will bend with that operation, we would hit a point where we don't feel comfortable bending any further. And you will notice there is a full connection between the floor all the way up to the top of your head in that place. From here, it's just an easy matter that we pivot on the heels and we go out 45 degrees. And then is the next crucial step. We pivot on the balls of the feet. And in Wing Chun, there is this turning in of the feet. In any type of Qigong, I've never seen anyone do that, right? If they're wearing skis, they're not snow plowing, it's going straight. And if we look at modern day sports science, and if you have any ankle, knee, or hip problems, it's to do with that kinetic chain that runs up your body. Even if you have spinal problems, it probably goes down all the way to that chain, and there's something there that's out of alignment. That usually starts with the feet. If they're pointed out, or one is pointed out and the other's pointed in straight, or they're pointed in, or one is. So being in or out, I would see that as a deviation. I understand the concept of a triangle, that you're going to a certain place and all of these sort of things. But looking purely at the physical body, the way I teach is that the feet are always kept straight. So as your heels come out, keep them straight. If you look down or you check in a mirror, you'll notice, I need to know the name of this bone. I'll get my leg up. There's a bone on your just below your knee. That bone would be aligned with if there's your big toe and your next toe, it's aligned with that point. Now, as you get to this place, because you were leaning forward to get there, you will now have about 3/4 or 70% of your weight on the balls of your feet. There is a training method where we have a different distribution. So there can be a case if you're trying to open the Yongquan point or the bubbling springs K1 that are located uh, on the sort of palm of your foot. You can be taught to do this. I don't want you to do this at this stage. I think it depends, people mix it up. But what you want to do is bring your weight back so you're centered. Okay. Now, one way to check that centering, if your Tai Gong's on, your Baihu is up, is you bring your middle finger to the third eye point, and you bring your other finger, middle finger, to your belly button. If you press on those points, you will feel a tingly, if someone presses on your belly button, it tingles. But because you're pressing on this point as well, you'll notice there's a tingling going back in your head and also in the belly, but there's a tingle that runs up the inside of you. As we do this, you will feel that tingle and then you'd like it to be balanced. And it naturally balances so that your feet form a tripod, so the weight's on the heel and then the weight's on the left and right hand side of your foot. In this stance now, you have connected the upper portion of your body as a singular whole with the Tai Gong on correctly. It integrates the lower part of your body, your legs. And now you have a full connection between the earth and the heavens. And it's a singular unit, a circuitry that's creating that connection. That circuitry is extremely important in your Qigong training. With this stance, we can then go on and perform the Silnam Tao. But you could also begin to perform Qigong. It doesn't matter. And the other thing is, Silnam Tao is Qigong. So inevitably you're performing Qigong, but it depends on the type of Qigong you're going to do. In this case, we're talking about the Silnam Tao form, so you'd execute and play the Silnam Tao form. But you could just as easily do one of the other forms we have, such as the Dantian Qigong or the Wing Chun Wanyan Ling Tung Qigong. Those types of Qigong, I haven't seen them in other styles of Wing Chun. I also haven't seen them in other styles of Tai Chi, but there are components of them that I have seen. In addition, I've also created other forms such as the Jingong, Qigong, Shengong, because the Silnam Tao form contains all of these things, and is a highly advanced type of Qigong. And I find that in order to train a student in all of these multiple programs from the get go, they become overwhelmed. Right now, I've only given you a small set of Qigong techniques. Now, what are those techniques? We already went through them. The raising of Bahui, the raising of the anus, where we did the centering, where we have a complete light energy from the earth going through the center of our body out to the heavens. In addition, in this stance, you would have complete structural alignment, and you can begin just to have those focus points in mind that they're on and they remain on. It gives you something to concentrate on. If we talk about a concentrative meditation, you have the meditative object. In this case, our body is the object, but it needs to be manipulated in certain ways. The Bahui, Tai Gong, the centering, and then the relaxation of the body into that stance. The reason why the knees themselves are bent is because it lowers your center of mass. When you lower your center of mass, you will find that the center of mass resides within the body. And I don't want to say, oh, 2.5 inches below the belly button, or 3 kun, or this or that. What you should really be doing is feeling it for yourself. Where is my center of mass in my body when I get into this stance correctly? You'll look and feel and find it. And that center of mass is your lower dantian. So you don't need to read a book. I'm disclosing these things to you right now. That is extremely important in all the training of Qigong. Your lower dantian is the battery that will generate the energy that can be expressed through this circuitry. That what I spoke about at the very beginning of this can be used in martial Qigong to produce Qin. So how does the Yi Qi Kim Yang Ma produce Qin? One of the things is with the lowering of the legs. It is actually building a tens integrity strength of the lower legs. Simply, if you were to stand all day, say somebody who, a pharmacist, they tend to stand up all day. Or if you're a laborer, you are standing and walking, going up ladders and down, lifting heavy objects. And then in comparison to someone who's, say, an office worker who sits all day, whose legs are going to be strongest? It's easy, right? So this is also a physical exercise that strengthens the legs, because the Jin force is, in the beginning, it's generated from the earth. As you advance further along, it's still generated from the earth, but the sensation of it is it's generated from your lower dantian. Or you can even change it so it doesn't always have to go down to the earth. It can just start there and be expressed. So with this training is a doorway into understanding the inner secrets of Chinese martial arts. And these gems are the Qigong and its flowering into Qin. It's very difficult, I would say, to express Qin correctly without your standing training. And hence, if we look at any of the Chinese martial arts, but I'll just select a few: Tai Chi, Xingyi, Bagua, White Crane, Wing Chun, they have this standing component. They all have that. Why? Because it's a necessity to produce this Jin force. All right, I'm going to pause it there. I hope that was helpful. If it was, please feel free to subscribe and like or watch some of the other videos that I have, such as the health lectures on Taoist alchemy and Qigong. All the best in your training.